We are back for four final questions, round of the bases, extra innings on YouTube with Dean Gray. I hope you'll check out the full audio version of the podcast on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. It'll be there. Dean, my first question is this. I love asking people about their dreams. What do they want to be when they grew up? And when I think about all of the labels that you have had over your career, and I think about archaeology, I'm probably like anybody else. I think about, Indiana Jones or something silly like that. But what did you want to be when you were growing up?
Indiana Jones. You nailed it right there. You nailed it right there. I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, I loved archaeology. I absolutely did. Out of an undergrad, and I did some time in Central America studying tropical botany. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be the career of being able to tramp through the rainforest and find the next medicinal plant, and then, looking at Central American archaeology, especially Mayan archaeology back in the day, that led me into plant physiology. It led me deeper into botany, which then led me into plant sciences overall and plant chemistry, which then led me into kind of like analytical chemistry, which got my foot in the door at MRIGlobal and then, through grad school and everything else. And then led into national security and defense work and work also with the National Institutes of Health, and then taking my understanding of plant biology, plant physiology, plant chemistry, and then starting to get out of the laboratory and starting to hire really talented people who know more about the topics than I did, and bring in even more recent scientists to start building teams, and then looking into how do high functioning teams work, and then think about leadership and leadership versus management. And then, I don't know, Joel, you look back 20 years and you go, wow, it looks like every piece of that puzzle fit in just perfectly to get you exactly where you are right now. But it sure didn't seem that way, going along the line, especially with the national security and defense stuff. I didn't think I would end up being probably 30 years ago, I didn't think that I would be, doing some of the work that I've been doing over the last couple of decades, for sure, because I didn't know it existed, so it's
right.
been a good run.
I mean, so my second question as we round the bases goes back to part of the intro that I read on the audio podcast about being moved by what you saw on 9/11. Of course, we all were. I mean, anybody that is old enough to remember that, dating ourselves now, I guess, because I feel like everybody should know, but we got a whole younger generation that's only studied it in school. I think almost everybody has to remember exactly where they were when it happened. I certainly do. I was actually out east in Baltimore visiting my brother, had seen the Twin Towers in the distance 2 days before that, visiting my grandfather in the hospital in New Jersey, never thinking that 2 days later, right? So, I mean, you have these images in your head. It clearly moved and affected you. What do you remember about that day?
Yeah. I mean, I was out in Oregon. I was working in Oregon, and I'd only been out there less than a year at that time, right out of grad school. And my wife and I were out there. We had our 6-month-old daughter at the time. And I remember getting ready to leave for work when this happened and thinking, we're going to head back to the Midwest. That's where, I was born and raised in Ohio. Katie, my wife, was, all of her family was right around the Kansas City area. And that's when we started talking about, we got to move back. And I knew that I wanted to do something different then. And I started looking at Midwest Research Institute at that point in time, and went through a series of interviews with them. And it was just a great experience with them. Back at that time, they said, well, Dean, we don't have a job open for you, but we're going to create one for you because we want you on board. And I moved from Oregon back to Kansas City then. And that was in the early spring of 2002.
Yeah.
So pretty quick move as far as that goes. And very just grateful for it.
20 years later, the rest is history. All right, I've got two final questions left as we round the bases. I'll go one heavy and one light, finish on a nice lighter note. But with the access you have, I'm not asking you, of course, to reveal certain things you won't, but you have access to know either what's coming up in the world, what's going on. Again, a lot of the things that we may or may not know, that certainly played itself out with the pandemic. What keeps you up at night these days?
There are a lot of things that keep me up at night. When we emerge from a pandemic, you're in between pandemics then. You're just in between this pandemic and the next pandemic. And preparedness is something that's on my mind quite a bit. And I'd say that from a longer term perspective, from the sciences and technology standpoint as well. When I look at our academics around our country and, doing our best to help kids get into STEM and STEAM education, diversity outreach. I think that we've got so much to do as just an overall country to maintain technical relevance, I think, in the world that's developing. And I think about that a lot. I think about it with our kids. I think about it with how we interact. MRIGlobal reacts in the community. I think about it every time we take a high school group on a tour, of MRIGlobal, of just how can we end up reaching more people to show that you do not have to be Einstein, to be able to get into the sciences. You don't. You can end up, if you're curious, and you want to devote some of your time to being able to study, there is going to be a discipline for you to be able to jump in and to be able to help our country's efforts in all of these really big areas. I probably think about that more than anything. Yeah. And
a lot of opportunity for so many people to make an impact, right? Meaningful work. All right. So the final question then, you actually asked me before we came on, are you taking care of yourself? And I know that that's important. When you're working in a pressure job, well, I would argue that we all are, and we all need to be able to decompress, right? To be able to get away from it. And I know that you do a lot of that in terms of taking care of yourself. How do you unwind and get away from it?
I run. I love to run. And I'm like toying with the idea of running the KC Marathon again in the spring. So maybe you can nudge me and edge me on a little bit. I haven't run it since 2006. And I'm pretty sure I've got at least one more in me. So I'm starting to do a little bit longer distances, and I meditate. I have a meditation practice, and every morning I end up having some time that's devoted to, not just the exercise part, but to the, kind of exercising your mind and the meditation part, which I think is just helped me tremendously over the years. Yeah. With stress levels.
When I'm going well, the meditation or just some of that reflection is there. When I'm not, everything starts to speed up. Same for the working out. I'm so glad when you asked for help with the marathon. I thought you were going to ask me to, run with you or something, and that's not happening unless you want me to run maybe a mile with you. I can do some sprints. My cardio is a little bit different. I'm not a distance guy. I can nudge though. I can do my part with that. As long as you're not asking me to take part in it, I can hand out drinks along the way. I can do that and support you. And if that's all you need, I'm in on it.
Any help is appreciated, Joel.
I understand. Yeah. And I know you can do it. So, Dean, again, thanks so much for doing this, for all the great work at MRIGlobal, for the emerging, the growing friendship for sure. And again, I want to encourage everybody to check out the full audio version of the podcast, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, whatever it is, wherever you listen to that. Dean, thanks again so much.
Joel, take care. Thanks so much.